Welcome to In the Lab with Hoopsology. I am Matt Thomas, joined as always by my best friend and co-host Justin Goodrum. Justin, how you doing, man?
Doing really well. How about yourself?
Doing well. Kind of a crazy week last week. Lots of weird news out there. Like we had the, of course, Titanic sub. I mean, unless you are living under a rock, I'm sure you heard about that. And then we had over the weekend a brief little story of, hey, Russia might not be a thing anymore. That was all over Twitter for, I don't know, about 15 hours or so. And but you know what? We also had a lot of NBA news, a lot of relevant stuff that went down. The draft, of course. We also got some more trades in addition to things we discussed on our last episode. And free agency looms. Free agency will be starting on June 30th at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. So we're going to get into all those topics today. And let's jump right in. We had the NBA draft last Thursday. It went down. Wemby, who memes are already asking, is he a top 5 player in the NBA already before he's even played in the NBA? Whoa, let's slow down here a minute. But he went number 1 to the San Antonio Spurs. No shocker there. I'm just going to go through top 5 picks real quick here. The Hornets draft Brandon Miller, not Scoot Henderson, with the second pick of the draft, leaving the Blazers to draft Scoot Henderson and not trade that pick away as Damian Lillard and his camp allegedly wanted them to do. The Rockets draft Amen Thompson with the 4th pick. And the Pistons, I love it. There's the Cade and Jalen Green rivalry from that draft 2 years ago. It continues. The Pistons draft Amen Thompson's twin brother, Ausar Thompson, with the 5th pick. So an interesting top 5. And then there, of course, was a lot that went on after that. But I want to focus in on the top 5 right now, Justin. And I don't think we need to discuss Wemby going number 1 in any more detail. That everyone knew that was happening. So congrats to the Spurs. The Hornets drafting Brandon Miller at number 2. I saw a video of a watch party that was going down in Charlotte, and there were a lot of boos, a lot of mixed emotions with the Hornets drafting Brandon Miller at number 2. Brandon Miller, really, other than his time at Alabama, the only thing I know from him in interviews recently is that he said Paul George is his GOAT of basketball. How do you feel about the Hornets drafting here? It seems like maybe a pick based on need and not based on top talent, depending on how you feel about Scoot Henderson and Amen Thompson. Do you think this is a swing and a miss by the Hornets, or do you feel better about it than a lot of people do out there?
I've told you this before. This is it's not, you're not supposed to say this, but yeah, I don't care. I'm I'm not a fan of the NBA draft. It's just so
Mm.
hard. It's just like kind of playing the lottery and just seeing what hits and what doesn't. I think even Jay Billis kind of alluded to that in terms of, we don't know how good, these guys are going to be, until we hit year 3, year 4. It's just so difficult. Regarding your question, I mean, you take a look at Woj. I mean, the Hornets really liked him. They worked him out. They taught him. I mean, they really extensively vetted him out. I think the only concern is, like you said, do you draft for talent, the best talent, or you draft for need? And to me, if you're that bad, and there's rare occasions where there's some top teams that get high draft picks, but for the most part, for the Hornets, I mean, they've been a bottom feller playoff team or just at the bottom of the league. I would say you draft for talent always, but at the same time, we'll see. I mean, if Brandon Miller is an all star, I don't think that's a bad pick. Look at Trey Young. I mean, how many people dodged on that pick, with Luca, that whole Luca situation? I mean, and look how, with Atlanta now they're looking to maybe trade him, but I don't think he was a failure. I don't think he was like this bust pick. So overall, we'll see. I don't think it's that. I don't think it's terrible. I mean, you take a look at what I found at DraftKings. They did a whole kind of just evaluations of all the picks here. They say he's an excellent prospect that might fit better with LaMelo than Scoot, and he's scored at every level. and I think he has a higher floor. So we'll see. I don't think this is such a terrible thing. I don't think it's they picked some guy that was going to be picked. I don't know, in the second round. No, so I don't think it's a huge deal, but I think if you're a Hornets fan, you're just desperate to get the hottest thing. You didn't get it, so I get their frustration.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of concerns about LaMelo, being a highlight player and not someone who can steer the franchise where it needs to go. Ultimately, those concerns are fair, but also with everything that went down with, I believe, Miles Bridges. The team was in disarray anyway. The team was obviously tanking for Wemby last season, as many teams kind of were towards the end there, especially. So I'm with you. I mean, Brandon Miller on paper looks like an ideal wing prospect, first wing drafted. So it's not like it was a huge reach. So I'm with you there. And he could just on paper, I mean, be a better NBA player overall. There are concerns about Scoot Henderson's size at 6'2". I mean, he will always be undersized as a guard in this league. People just love him because of the highlights and because of his determination and things in interviews. I mean, seems like I would argue culturally, maybe he would have a bigger splash and be just what the Hornets need. But obviously, the Hornets don't agree with that. They've made mistakes in the past, certainly. So I can't say I have full confidence in the Hornets, but I don't see this as a huge swing and a miss either. Want to also get your thoughts. We have a lot of rumors going on as we speak right now about Damian Lillard and some serious intentions with him going to the Miami Heat, maybe forcing a trade there, or and also maybe the Blazers are signaling that it's time as well with their pick of Scoot Henderson. Maybe you could play Damian Lillard and Scoot Henderson together, but then we're back in a situation where it's kind of like, well, why wouldn't you just keep CJ McCollum then at that point if we're going to do this two small combo guard type of routine? So, Justin, I just want to know, based on the little info we know and that's out there, other than speculation, and when the Blazers draft Scoot Henderson, is that a signal to you that the Dame era is over in Portland?
Um, it's tough to say. I think it can go either way. I think you would agree in this league, despite the last few NBA champions, I think you at least need one superstar, one all star. I don't think, I think it's virtually impossible to win the title with just one all star player. You need at least a collection of them. So to me, just to start over and get rid of Dame for what? I mean, I don't know. What would Miami trade? I mean, would they give up the part of their core nucleus? I mean, what exactly? I'm curious what that trade would look like
Right.
if that does go down. So I don't know. I don't think it's a sign that they're going to get rid of Damian Lillard. We'll see. I've heard some talks. Some of our former guests have intimated that they are concerned that they're going to lose Lillard. I mean, he's been such a huge pillar for that team and that community. To start over, I would wonder why. I mean, just with to me, it just be like you're just starting over again, despite with Scoot. When why just try to play them together and see what happens? I don't know.
Yeah, looking at it, and of course, if you didn't see, Damian Lillard was playing the Will Smith song "Welcome to Miami" in I don't know, an Instagram live or some type of streaming or something. So there's a lot of speculation behind that. His team said there's he means nothing by that. There wasn't a hidden message. But then it's being rumored as we speak that there is legitimate interest in Miami. So I don't know. It's going back and forth. We've had the Dame drama for several years, and not that he's a very dramatic person himself. It's just always brought up in the offseason. I do think when I look at it from the other side of things, like Damian Lillard's fit in Miami in terms of his personality and match there, I think it's a match made in heaven. So it wouldn't shock me at all if he ends up in Miami. But you're right. I'm curious what they give in order to get him, because
Yeah.
I don't feel like Tyler Hero and Caleb Martin maybe would be enough to get this done. I think the Blazers would want a little bit more from this, and I'm not really sure Miami's draft pick situation, and if that's even going to be appealing if they're going to be serious contenders again next year, which of course we don't know that they are going to be. But yeah, definitely a situation we will be keeping an eye on as we get further along. Justin, I also wanted to get your thoughts on maybe just what you saw, just generally speaking from the draft before we move into the coverage. Any particular winners or losers that standed out to you?
I got a different take on that. Winners is how would I phrase this? Players not going to college. Winners.
Ah,
So overtime, G League, international. I think that was you that in our friend chat that posted, 3 of the top college players to not even get drafted, if I'm correct. So,
mm,
and we'll see. This could be a
that's true.
loser down the line with the Thompson brothers was overtime. I mean, we've seen this in college basketball before when you see a lot of Duke players, when you see a lot of Kentucky players, and so on get selected and they perform well in the pros. That helps recruiting. This could help overtime. This could change the way we think about this prep sports overall in terms of players leaving high school and then despite NIL just going to overtime or just that's bailing out of high school and just pursuing overtime altogether. They're getting paid, they're getting educated, they're learning how to be a pro. I mean, why just bypass that route altogether? So and look at the G League as well, and we'll just have to wait and see if that's a success. So I think for players not going to college, I think it was a huge win. College will always be there. You always have just the big coaches, just the players would want their education. I mean, there's other reasons why players probably find the college route more appealing than what the new methods are now. But I do think the big winner was just those alternative methods of going to the league.
Yeah, and I just took a look of the top 10. 5 of the players came from colleges.
Yeah,
5 of the players came from minor leagues, other situations,
yeah,
kind of non-traditional methods. So
yeah,
it has been picking up steam. I would guess that that's probably the record thus far in history in terms of those alternative methods. I know there was a big overtime elite contingent when Jalen Green was drafted 2 years ago as well, but I'd have to go back and look. I don't think it was half of the top 10.
yeah,
Um, and furthermore, I mean, 5 out of the top 7. So you see the impact that this is having, and that this is picking up steam. I think I'm with you. I think that'll continue to be the trend. I think more and more people are thinking of college as kind of a scam. So I think that trend will continue in the NBA. And if your intention, if you're a top 100 prospect coming in and you have intentions of going pro, why not just focus on that? I mean, this is akin to getting closer to the European system or even Australian system, where they have schools with an athletic intent, like kind of a development league that you go through, hone those skills more intensely, even earlier,
yeah.
if that is your ultimate career aspiration. So moving forward, I wanted to get your thoughts. Both you and I talked about it before we got on here, and we both watched the draft. I watched, I want to say, the first 30 to 40 minutes of the draft off and on here and there. I'll be honest, I was cooking dinner. I was doing other things as it was going on, but I did try to tune in when it came back from commercial. Just want to get your thoughts on the coverage. It seems like every year we run into this again, where overall, it seems people are just unhappy with the draft coverage overall. This year, I will say personally, to me, uh, it feels like it's getting more and more, no disrespect, but like a Lifetime movie. And there's nothing wrong with a Lifetime movie. That's fine. But when you think that your audience, and the numbers bear this out, I mean, the audience is predominantly male, I mean, at least 2/3 male, and we're getting a lot more time interviewing the families, and it feels like a lot less time talking about X's and O's and fit with this team, what this may look like. There is some of both of that. What I'm saying is the scales have shifted a little bit more to the touchy feely type of stuff. And look, I'm not, I know I sound so crusty right now. I'm not saying that I don't want any time with the families or anything like this. Obviously, this is a life changing moment for these families, and that's great. But Justin, I basically just gave you my thoughts on this right now. What are your thoughts on the coverage?
It's interesting because I know with ESPN in particular, the draft, NFL and NBA, they're trying to make it more of an event, especially with the NFL draft. That's like a huge thing,
Mhm.
with it being prime time. I get your point with the draftees. I think it's about telling stories. Just my background in just combat sports. I think that's important. Not just to tell what the action is going on in whatever venue, whatever sport that's been going on, but they'll tell the backgrounds of the athletes in general. So I don't mind that. I don't see that as being too much of an issue. I think when you get into X's and O's and let's get too much into weeds, I think you might alienate casual fans out there. And I
Mm.
think that's what ESPN is looking for. They're looking for that casual viewer that might be like, oh, this person, I don't know, beat cancer, or they went to this, I don't know, they have some kind of interesting angle about them rather than, hey, can they play? Can they defend against a zone, or they suck in them, man to man, or their free throw percentage needs to increase. Like I think they want to look for those more human stories. I think they're taking a page out of the WNBA draft. That was all about that. It was very much story driven, and then you focus on the basketball afterwards. So I see your point. I have to take a look at the ratings. I'm very curious if you have that data. I would love to know how the
I
ratings
do
work,
not.
but I could look it up. But I just think for me, I don't see too much of a problem with it. But the ratings draw that out. That's kind of my rule. If people like it, I mean, then they like it. If they don't, then you have to make a change. Despite my own personal feelings about it, I get your point. I get it can
Yeah,
get
yeah, yeah.
super sappy, and there's like all these families up there. I get it. It's just kind of like, you know, what's the big point of this draft? But I think at the same time, I think they're trying to tell the stories of these guys in the league, which may feel antiquated just because there's social media. They can tell their own stories via their own platforms. So I get what you're saying.
Well, and here's the thing too. I know again this sounds mean and crusty, but hey, I guess I'm just in a mood today or something. But not everyone has an interesting story. Just to put it bluntly, that doesn't mean that not everyone deserves a little bit of time to share that story. And yeah, I do think it's important to sell the players because the players are the product, the commodity of this league that draw people in. So you got to build up something. I totally agree. I just think for me, the balance has shifted a little too much the other way. But obviously, this is very subjective, and other people feel very differently about that. So be curious to see what we get moving forward with that. There's a little banter between co-hosts. I'm not sure if you saw the joke that seemed like didn't really land, at least with how social media reacted, which granted you got to take a grain of salt there too. But
Yeah,
when JJ Redick was called an average shooter in his NBA career, which was, I think, pretty obviously a joke. It just wasn't delivered as well as it could have been. Obviously, like JJ handled things like a professional on his social media, and I think was kind of surprised that people were offended by that or whatever. Just like, dude, she's disrespecting you, and really, I don't think that was the case. Seemed like a joke that just didn't land all that well. I don't know. A lot of interesting things about this coverage.
yeah.
Um,
I
and
found
it
the
feels
ratings were up 23%.
Oh wow. Well,
Yeah,
that's huge.
yeah,
And maybe, it's hard to know. I mean, that top 3 was very interesting for one thing. A lot
yeah,
of people, I mean, the Wemby effect has to be in play too. People are eager just to like see him and what he looks like, since, he's kind of like a basketball alien, so to speak, is something that we've never seen before. So some of that I would guess would be the draw, but I mean, credit to the coverage there that it did not. I mean, ratings did not go down, so clearly was not a hindrance there.
Yeah.
Um, the other thing I wanted to mention that I think is an interesting topic to bring up, and then we need to get into trade talk and free agent talk, but quickly, it gets brought up every year that you're if you're sitting watching the draft go by, there's really no need to, because you can turn on your Twitter alerts for Woj and Shams, and you can see the picks go by, and you will know what the pick is before it is even announced on the TV, because NBA executives, whoever it is, someone is feeding both Woj and Shams this information, and they will have it to you. Um, my question is, does this take away from that TV product? You mentioned earlier about the NFL trying to make the draft a TV product, a huge event. And the NBA, I'm sure, would love to compete with the NFL draft. I mean, the NBA wants to compete with the NFL and blow out the NFL. I mean, they're both competitors in the entertainment business. Do you think there is, first of all, I mean, is it detrimental for Woj and Shams to be tweeting these things out? And is this something where you think it would be reasonable for the league to take action? Hey, ESPN, hey, The Athletic, even though you guys are partners with us and you promote our league, settle down with these Woj and Shams tweets for these 2 hours while the draft is going on. What are your thoughts there?
I think that's a very slippery slope. Um, just because I think like you're censoring the media. And then also, I'm wondering how many people are going to be that outraged about it being spoiled. Like, don't go on your phone. Like, if you're a basketball fan, you know about Adrian Wojnarowski, you know about Shams. I
It's
mean, you
true.
know about all these sites. Why? I don't understand. That's your own fault. Like, don't look at your phone. Like, that's stupid. And they're going to tell you on the broadcast anyway. Like, is that a spoiler about Wimpy? Like, I don't understand. Like, is that a spoiler about like the other picks, happening here? Like that's the news. Like Woj is telling you, hey, the Charlotte Hornets worked out Braylon Miller. They really like him. He's likely like he can't say that on TV. Like, what are we doing here? What's the point of having this draft? Like, you just want him to just have picks. Like, like, what's the point of having analysis? Like, we're just gonna have, well, we don't know who's gonna get picked, and then we're gonna act like it's a surprise. Like, I don't know. I
Yeah, I
just think
mean, I
it's pretty
think
foolish to me.
I think beforehand and and afterwards, obviously, it's a done thing. I guess the argument would be to try and funnel and focus viewers as much as you can into tuning into the draft itself on television. Like if you're
But aren't
looking
there?
at
Yeah,
boosting TV ratings and things like that.
but aren't the viewers just? I mean, let's keep it real. The viewers are going to be tuned into who's hot in the draft, not if the who's getting spoiled. So if the draft has scrub players, like they can do whatever, the draft's going to be mediocre. And if there's a once in a generational talent like Victor Wembanyama, the coverage could suck, but the ratings are going to be high because they want to see Victor. So it doesn't matter. So to me, this depends on like getting the picks over. I think that's kind of the situation with these networks is getting, your next draft class, and that's through Sports Center, that's through just your NBA coverage, and not making them perceive like they're crap players and hyping them up.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where the work comes into. I just think relying on like coverage is just like the Super Bowl, for instance. It's just like a lot gets made of, oh, Joe Buck's doing a game. I'm not going to watch. Like, what? Okay, well, sucks to be you. Well, you're gonna miss a great game. So I
Yeah.
think coverage is overrated. I think this comes down to ultimately just the substance that's being fed to the viewer, which is the quality of the draft picks. I get it in terms of, I think for hardcore fans like us, I think it's more of a factor. But for the casual viewer or for people having draft parties, the volume's down. You're just waiting to see who gets picked. I mean,
Yeah, I think the other thing that couldn't be controlled here, as we're thinking this through, I think whether Woj and Shams are tweeting or not, I mean, after the pick is made, it's going to be someone's going to tweet it out on Twitter no matter what. So the question really comes into play is, does it get people to tune in to television to not know ahead of time, like a couple minutes before that pick is announced? Like if Woj or Shams or whoever tweeted it, if they hadn't tweeted Brandon Miller is picked second, because that's where the drama was in this draft, the main drama anyway. Would more people have tuned in to see that happen on TV? And I think there is somewhat of an argument that ESPN, in owning that property and paying for that TV deal, I do think that gives them some sway there to say, like, hey, you guys are spoiling the time sensitivity of this product after the pick is made and announced on television. Like, we want television to be the first place that's announced, and then you guys can tweet away. I mean, we're really talking about a difference of, maybe 3 to 5 minutes in terms of when this information is being
Yeah.
announced. I don't know in the modern age that it makes as big of a difference as, the people who would side with, having Woj and Shams wait until the pick is officially in and announced on TV. I don't know how big of an impact. That's why I find it to be a fascinating topic, is that I don't really know unless we saw it practiced. I don't know that it increases ratings or not.
I know we got to move on, but I'll just say this. I think there's other metrics too in terms of how the draft does, and that's social media and that's like internet, right? And I think if you're the NBA as a league, I think it's one of those things. If you're getting buzz for your league, does it matter about if it's being spoiled or not? I mean, this is driving in terms of TV ratings down the line. I mean, look at, you know, when Victor plays Scoot, or when whoever, the top five play each other. Like, it's to a point that if this is driving enough interest to Summer League in terms of, the first game of the season, I mean, to me, what does it matter if the draft's being spoiled? And if the ratings are lower for the draft, but ultimately there's more interest on social media. I mean, to me, it's just, I don't understand. I think it's weird with people in terms of, well, really push how social media is this big thing, but yet but in this case, make television seem more important. Like, which is it? Like, I think they
Right.
all worked in congruence with each other. So even though a person may not be watching the draft, if they're following on their phone, they might see the clips online of Victor being drafted. That's most likely going to be through ESPN. So I
Right.
don't know. I just think there's different metrics nowadays besides just that television rating being the end all be all. I mean, there's other revenue that the league and ESPN is making besides just their advertisers on television.
100%. Yeah. I think the NBA doesn't have a problem. The NBA has been always super open about people using their content and promoting their product. Very rare that people get, banned and things like that for using NBA footage, even without permission, which I think is really cool. Um, I think the question comes into play when it's ESPN, and if ESPN is like, hey, we're putting on this coverage, we own the rights to the official broadcast for this event. I think that's where the deeper question lies. But if ESPN is not up in arms about it, then there's no issue, and
Yeah.
it'll continue how it is. And seems like that'll be the case since, as you mentioned, ratings were up for this draft.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. We'll
we'll
see
see what
how it
happens
goes. Yeah.
for sure. Let's move into some trades, because we had some really impactful trades with some huge names. Maybe not quite as big as the Beal deal. Maybe this first one a little bit bigger than the Beal deal, because there was more than one major player involved. So let's get into it. Boston. This happened on June 23rd. Boston lands Kristaps Porzingis. Holy moly. He will be an expiring contract, so that's something to bear in mind with this. They also get the number 25 pick, which was traded to Detroit, who turned into Marcus Sasser. They also get a 2024 first round pick. That's right, the Celtics also get a first round pick. And I could be wrong. I don't believe they would have had a pick in this draft had they not executed this trade. Then the Grizzlies get from the Celtics Marcus Smart. So out with Dylan Brooks in terms of your toughness culture there, and in with Marcus Smart mirrors, a lot of people mention, and I think it's accurate, the Tony Allen to Memphis from the Celtics back several years ago, about a decade ago, maybe a little more than a decade ago, actually. So the Grizzlies get Marcus Smart out of this deal. The Wizards get Tyus Jones from the Grizzlies. The Wizards get Danilo Gallinari, who was injured last season for the Celtics. And the Wizards get Mike Muscala. And Julian Phillips was picked from the draft and traded to the Chicago Bulls. So, all right. The Celtics get Kristaps Porzingis, the best player. I think everyone would agree, had a pretty solid season last year in Washington, even though that Wizards team wasn't great. And the Celtics get 2 first-round picks. So they get the best player and the best assets. Grizzlies get Marcus Smart, and Wizards get Tyus Jones, who's a young, promising guard, Danilo Gallinari, who may be an expiring contract, NBA veteran. He may get moved during the season, as well as 2 others, 1 second-round pick that they wound up trading to Chicago, as we mentioned. How did this happen? How did the Celtics get both Porzingis and these 2 first-round picks? Do you understand this trade, Justin?
No, it's a crazy trade. It's a chance, I think, with Porzingis. I've been on his bandwagon, but at some point, I just think injuries, wear and tear. I think, but it might be a good role for him, just being kind of a strong role player, and possibly off the bench or a player to stick into the starting lineup, depending on their versatility. So I think it's a smart move for the Celtics. It shows they're being proactive, especially because of what happened this past playoff year. I think they need to make some changes. So the question is, does that mean getting rid of Marcus Smart? I mean, I felt a pretty core part of that team. We'll see. I mean, I could have, consequences down the line, but, I think there's some room to be optimistic for the Celtics, especially having picks in the draft. That's going to be huge for them.
This really pushes the Celtics to find new leadership, because Marcus Smart, since 2014, I believe, when he was drafted, he was kind of the heart and soul of this team, and kind of the tough guy of this team as well. So now the Celtics are going to have to see, Tatum, can you step up and be that leader? Jaylen Brown, is that you? Are you going to be the leader of this team? I mean, obviously they still have Al Horford and his great veteran leadership. This is a huge win for the Celtics, and I don't think there's any other way to look at it. They get to do a test run with Porzingis here and see if they want to eventually re-sign him. Of course, they'll kind of have first dibs on that if they want to, and he could be an excellent pairing next to Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum if they can afford to do that. Also, the Celtics simultaneously take care of kind of a sort of overgrowth issue in their guard position. Now Derek White can play more. Now Malcolm Brogdon, who was 6th man of the year last season, he can play more. A little awkward that at first they almost sent him to the Clippers as a part of this deal when it was first formed, but I'm sure they'll figure that out. And I think this makes Celtics arguably right up there with the Bucks again, depending on what shakes out with Chris Middleton, who opted out. I think this makes them once again favorites, maybe co-favorites in the Eastern Conference right away, because of that extra rim protection you're getting with Porzingis, and you can still run 5 on the court with the Celtics, where all 5 players have range. And I think if everyone's healthy, once again, they are a tough out. And I don't know. You can say what you want about Coach Mazzulla. He got them pretty far. Should be able to get them even further if he's still around at the start of next season. I don't think he will hold them back from at least matching the Eastern Conference Finals at this point. But hey, we've still got a lot of offseason to go. Want to get your thoughts also on the other big part of this. I mean, it seems like Wizards are in development, tanking mode right now. Maybe a season too late, you could argue. But let's look at the Grizzlies side of this. We talked about in our last episode, John Morant is suspended for 25 games. So this makes a huge impact on a team that already was quite good without John Morant in the lineup last season and in previous seasons. Has kind of been a shocking thing how good they have been in spite of John Morant's absences, whether due to suspension or injury. So this is a team that needed veteran leadership. You're certainly getting that with Marcus Smart. How do you feel about his fit with Memphis? And are you positive, negative on this, even if maybe they gave up a little bit too much to get him?
I'm pretty positive on this. Adds some toughness, adds a lot of experience. He knows when things are not going well that you could turn things around. I think, especially for a young team, that can get mentally taxing, and I think he's been through the ringer, so I think that's pretty invaluable. So overall, I think this is a good move for the Grizzlies to make. Come playoff time, we'll see. I think Marcus Smart has his positives and negatives. But I think overall, you do need somebody like that on your team to ultimately get to that final destination, which is a title win. So, overall, I think this is a positive.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Even if they had to overpay a little bit, this is a team with depth, and veteran leadership is a huge need. If Steven Adams is still around next season, now you've got two solid vets here that can help out, and there's still the full offseason to go, essentially. Let's move on because we've got another trade to talk about. And this trade is something that uh, you and I talked about in terms of the Draymond controversy last season. Draymond punched Jordan Poole, and it was messy. And I think it messed with their season. It messed with their title repeat chances. And so coming into this offseason, Draymond has entered free agency. He is still a free agent, and that won't be settled till at least the 30th, where he goes. But there was kind of a sense, Jordan Poole on a multi-year deal at this point. Some people say the Warriors, that's a pretty bad contract, but now they don't have to worry about it because it seems to me they have signaled in this deal, and we can talk about this more, but it seems to me this is, for one thing, you get the experience of Chris Paul, but you also get your signaling of loyalty to Draymond Green. Hey, let's run this back. Jordan Poole isn't here anymore. Yeah, we probably all agree that you were wrong for leveling him with that punch. But Draymond, you've been with us for years. You've been the heart and soul, certainly of our defense, and maybe a big part of our culture here too. But Chris Paul is traded from the Wizards. We figured he wouldn't last there. There were rumors he was going to the Clippers again for that reunion. Not to be. Traded Chris Paul for Jordan Poole, a protected first-round pick in 2030, and a second-round pick in 2027, and Ryan Rollins. So first, Jordan Poole, I think, let me know if you have any different feelings here, but I think he may be a big stats guy. He moves into the Bradley Beal role on this team. He's going to get a lot of shots. He's going to get a chance to show what he can do. I think it could be disastrous because to this point in his career, defenses haven't really he hasn't really been the primary focus of defenses, obviously, next to Curry and Clay. So Jordan Poole, how do you think he does in this Wizards situation here?
I think it's a fresh start, but losing wears quickly. So, if you
True.
thought the situation in Golden State was bad, I think it's not going to improve in Washington. But at the same time, if he's able to adapt, and this is a good opportunity for him. I mean, there's all-star consideration just in terms of, like you said, Matt, more opportunity to score. So it sounds like it's a corny answer, but it's up to him to make the best of it. We'll see. It could go either way. I agree.
Yeah, I think the change of scenery with all the body language on the bench in the playoffs, I think he almost played and acted himself into this trade happening. I do think if he had a different performance in the playoffs, then I think honestly Draymond might be gone. But man, with all the money and time dedicated to him still on that contract, um, I think the Warriors made the right move here. They get Chris Paul. Seems to me could be a useful piece. of course, for trying to get back. Screams to me of like, hey, we can bring Draymond back. We can maybe go for one last hurrah. And Chris Paul is going to be someone who's great to fit in this guard rotation. I think if he can get healthy and be around, if Chris Paul is just running the second unit for the Warriors, that is amazing. I mean, he can still, I think, elevate guys around him, and in a situation where he could be the head of a second unit. This is a great match, and a smart player and a guy, honestly, who could be sort of working towards an assistant coach type of role from the bench eventually. As he gets closer to the end of his NBA career, but I think Chris Paul can be very useful, and I think he can have maybe the least amount of pressure he's had in a long time on him here, maybe ever, and have kind of pick his spots in the playoffs. How do you like the fit of Chris Paul in this Warriors team?
We've talked about, I guess, his tendency to get injury prone, so I'm hesitant about this. I think it's one of those situations where if Clay or if Steph get hurt, he's going to be put in a position to produce on a consistent basis. And
True.
I feel pretty uneasy about that. However, if they stay healthy, I think he'll be a valuable asset because you don't need him to score. I mean, you have Steph and Clay for that. So I think he'll fit right in. I know, I guess Steph and Chris Paul had some beef back in the day. I guess that's all resolved now. So I think it'll be interesting to see them just, being on the same team. But I think if injuries do become an issue, I do think it might be too much for Chris Paul to handle. So we'll see.
It's kind of surreal because it's sort of a pairing that never, I never thought would have made sense,
Right.
to have like Chris Paul and Steph Curry on the same team together. But, time changes things. And it seems like maybe it's not the perfect fit, but if Chris Paul is in, once again, a second unit type of situation here primarily, then that brings up a huge weakness for the Warriors. So could be just what they need in many respects. Let's move forward. We have one more trade to quickly look at. Just mostly want to announce to you guys, I think it's pretty obvious why it happened. John Collins and Trae Young, I mean, there are rumors for years that the Hawks were trying to trade John Collins. And I think a primary reason is that there was a big clash that happened, I think, 2 years ago in terms of John Collins wanting to be the focal point of the offense. And that just was never in the cards, while Trae Young was having his ascension in Atlanta and becoming sort of the star player and a driving force in the city of Atlanta, to be honest. I mean, something for Atlanta sports fans to get really excited about, especially that year where they had that improbable seeming run to the Eastern Conference Finals. So this is settled. Rudy Gay, yes, he is still in the league. He is traded from the Jazz. No disrespect, Rudy. Excited that you're still in the league. Rudy Gay and a second-round pick to the Atlanta Hawks for John Collins. This is in part a salary dump. It gives the Hawks a lot of options. They can keep DeJounte Murray on the roster moving forward, and they can keep Trae Young paired with him if they want to. And the Jazz have a lot of cap space. I think it's kind of maybe a weird pick on this team when you consider like Kessler on the roster and how well he played, along with Markkanen, of course, being like the star of that team. And the three of those guys kind of can fit into power forward or center roles. But hey, you've got a guy who I think is pretty versatile. And so you can certainly have three guys rotating through those two positions. And of course they have more depth there even beyond that. Any thoughts on this trade?
Not too much. You summed it up. I think just with the Hawks, I think they're trying to go over their future, especially with Trae Young, like DeJounte Murray. Is that going to be kind of the way that they want to move, or do they just want to do they want to start over as well? So I think this is part one in terms of developing what they want to do.
First off season for Quinn Snyder as coach.
Yep.
Going to be interesting to see how the chips fall there. All right, last topic to cover for today. Free agency. Oh, joy. NBA offseason is here. And I don't mean that sarcastically. It's going to be really interesting. I mean, genuinely, a lot of big names that could really change some franchises out there. So here's how we're going to frame this. Justin, you're a Bulls fan. I'm a Rockets fan. Both our teams stink right now, but hey, maybe things will turn around. But there are some big name free agents here. I don't want to consider salary cap restrictions, things like that. I just want to know. We'll go through. I'll let you lead the way on these for your Chicago Bulls, and then I'll give an answer for my Houston Rockets. Yes or no? Would you want your team to sign this player? And I'm going to go through some of the top names in free agency. Here we go. Justin, would you be excited for Draymond Green to be signed by the Chicago Bulls?
I would. He wouldn't be a difference maker, but I think he'd bring in the mentality of winning a championship again. It's just one of those things when you've been through every possible scenario. Draymond's been through when the Warriors stunk. They've been through when they were the favorite. They've been through when they're the underdog. That provides you a great mental toughness to when you don't need to panic about certain things and panic about other things that are important. So I think I would be excited, even though it wouldn't be such a massive difference on the court in terms of him being like this savior. But in terms of the signing, I think I would be excited. Yep.
Yeah, I'd be excited as well, especially Draymond and Coach Udoka in Houston working on upping the defense of that young core. I would love to see it. Quickly, I mean, if you had to bet, if you had to place money on this right now, would you bet Draymond goes to the Warriors, or would you bet on the field?
Good question. I think I bet on the field. I think if he wasn't good friends with LeBron, I think I would have him returning to the Warriors. But I just think at this point, I just think he's going to the Lakers. I really do.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
A lot of rumors about the Kings right
Yeah.
now. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
I personally would bet the Warriors. Actually, I think
Makes sense.
especially now with Jordan Poole gone, I think chemistry would be better on that team. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens. I mean, I think just from the drama side of things, Draymond is maybe the most interesting free agent. Not necessarily even the on the court things.
Yeah.
All right, we'll lightning round some of the rest of these since they're not quite as deep. Brook Lopez, would you want him as a Bull? Yes or no?
Yeah, I would. I like Brook Lopez. I always liked him a lot. I know his brother. I think his brother played for Chicago, didn't he? I don't
Yes,
know.
Robin did.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I always thought Brooke was a more talented brother.
Oh
So
yeah.
I'd be very excited to have him for sure.
Yep, I'm with you. Yes, absolutely. Fred Van Vliet, 2019 NBA champion.
Yes, desperately indeed, especially with Lonzo Ball. Absolutely, he'd be a great addition and just kind of some stability in that point guard position. So yes,
Yeah, I have mixed feelings because the Rockets have a ton of guard depth, but the
yeah,
Rockets don't have a ton of guard veteran leadership. So if we got Fred Van Vliet for like a 3-year deal or something like that, I'm gonna overall say yes. Um, Dylan Brooks of Memphis Grizzly infamy, you might say, much maligned this last postseason with how he intentionally fouled LeBron, etc., went after LeBron, and ultimately failed in the first round. Yes or no to Dylan Brooks to the Bulls?
I think if he went to the Bulls, he'd be compared to Joakim Noah, and I think he'd be just like a disappointment compared to Noah. He's so beloved in Chicago, so probably not.
I'm going to say no as well.
Yeah.
I don't know. I honestly might be an unfair judgment, but just from what I've seen on the court, I don't know that I want him influencing the young core of Houston. So I'm going to say no as well. And if I heard otherwise, other stories about him and more leadership in Memphis, etc., that were positive, maybe I would change my mind on that because you could get him for fairly cheap right now. It's rumored he's $12 million a year, I think, is what he's asking. All right, big one, maybe the most talented name here, even if he has passed his prime, James Harden. Would you want him as a Bull? Yes or no?
Oh, I would say yes. begrudgingly. I just think because of his scoring. Now the tough thing is it's totally hypothetical. I mean, he would be with, Zach Levine and DeMar DeRozan. I think there'd be some issues there. Depending, it's a scenario where they got rid of Zach Levine. I think that would be a good match. But I just don't like what I heard about Doc Rivers. Just
Hmm.
him, just being his
Yeah.
mindset overall. I just don't like that. So begrudgingly, yes, it's because he's such a, I think, potential generational talent. But I would have my concerns. That's for sure.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. I could see where he could be a decent fit on the Bulls and
Yeah,
kind of raise their floor. I don't know about raising their ceiling all that much. For my answer, specifically because of past history in Houston, I know most Rockets fans, it's from what I see anyway, people posting would disagree with me, but I'm gonna say no, simply because James Harden has been there in Houston for 8 years, and I just want to turn the page forward. I don't want the next couple years James Harden being playing on the court and benching Amen Thompson. Thompson may not be ready to go this year, but I want him playing, maybe like 6 man or like 15 minutes a game, like start building that up. I just think Harden would take away from that too much. And there's so much guard depth in Houston. And I said yes to Fred VanVleet, but that's because he's younger and we haven't had him on the Rockets yet.
yeah,
I just feel
sure.
like there's too much personal baggage in some ways with James Harden if he came back to Houston. It's still rumored that that's a big possibility. I think personally it's just to give him leverage for re-signing with the 76ers is how I feel about it. We'll see if I'm right or wrong. Kurt Helen, who we had on the show, I mean, you can go back and listen to his clip. He was very, very bullish. This was months ago, but thought, no, there is fire to this smoke with James Harden. Moving forward, Harrison Barnes.
I think I'll keep it brief. My excitement for him has waned a long time ago. So no.
Hmm. I think character guy, veteran
Yeah,
leadership, I would want him on the Rockets. I could see with pieces you already have in Chicago why that wouldn't be as great of a fit
agreed.
for what you guys have. So
Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense to me. One more, Justin, just for you, because he's a free agent. I have to ask Kyle Kuzma. Wants now don't factor salary cap into your
Sure.
equation here, but he wants 30 million a year, and he did have a good season last year.
Yeah. No thanks. He can keep his eccentric fashion somewhere else.
I would say no as well for the Rockets, even though I mean he's entering sort of a veteran stage of his career.
It's
He
true.
can kind of claim that. I don't think he brings the defense to the table that the Rockets sorely need at that
Yeah.
wing position. And I'd rather have like Tari Eason getting minutes there. I'd rather have more time for KJ, even though we've had a couple years to see KJ play. I just would rather not those minutes go to Kyle Kuzma, even if he could raise their floor a bit, give them a better shot in getting into the play-in tournament. So that's what we have for today. Any last notes or things you wanted to mention, Justin? Any topics or headlines that we missed?
No, I think that covers it. Just again, it's been a fantastic season. Just check out our archived interviews just through either our YouTube channel or through our podcast feed. If you have any feedback, please email us at hoopsologypod@gmail.com. We would love to hear it.
Absolutely. Enjoy the start of free agency. I'm sure we will have things to say about it next week as the news starts coming in. For Justin Goodrum, I'm Matt Thomas. Thank you as always for listening and supporting the show. Peace out.
See ya. Bye bye.